Let's all take a deep breath in and let it out. So, as Lorna shared, our focus for today's training and roundtable discussion is New Year planning will. As a friendly reminder, I shared on last week's weekly training and roundtable the 12 powers of the 12 days of Christmas, because last week's training fell on January 6th, the 12th day of Christmas. Those 12 powers are faith, strength, wisdom, love, power, imagination, understanding, will, order, zeal, release, and life. Last week we focused on the 12th power. And today we are focusing on the power of will, W-I-L-L. Write that down. Will is the most misunderstood of the 12 powers. Will is not about having power over something or someone, as it is typically misunderstood, and it is not about control or influence. It's actually the exact opposite. As I shared on social media last week, the events of the past week in the United States Capitol was a disastrous example of what occurs as a result of power over. As highly sensitive entrepreneurs and leaders, we have to reckon with what we saw last week, the violence and the discriminatory response versus the national response that was given to Black Lives Matter movement earlier in 2020. As part of this reckoning, spiritual will is our choice point. Please write that down. Spiritual will moves us in divine right action with clarity and peace. Divine right will is a decision and action from the essential self and power within. Please write that down. Spiritual will is a decision and action from the essential self and power within. Spiritual will is trust with secure attachment. To be able to activate this power intentionally is what will allow you to plan and navigate the consistency of change that you can absolutely expect through these exceptional times. The consistency of change that you can absolutely expect through these exceptional times. And if nothing else, last week showed us that. Spiritual will also support you in balancing the necessities of day-to-day needs with the energy of living legacy, meaning to stay moving forward with what needs to be taken care of in the day-to-day while also remaining conscious of what's happening in a bigger way. I want to look at both energetic and practical tools that will support you with being able to implement this consistent activation and use of spiritual will as part of New Year planning. Starting with the energetic, I want to reintroduce the power of the I am statement. You can write that down. The I am statement. So the I am statement is a process and a practice that I've worked intimately with myself. I've worked and continue to work intimately with the I am statement practice with the Business Miracles team. And I've worked intimately with the I am statement with previous Business Miracles Eminence members. So I want to talk about the I am statement and in connection to the events of last week. So first of all, I'll share that part of my 2021 I am statement is I am calm. Last Wednesday, after our, in my opinion, fabulous weekly training and roundtable, within just a few hours, everything flipped. And I personally went into a coping mechanism tailspin like I haven't experienced in a really, really long time. And that tailspin lasted close to 24 hours. From the moment that I first heard of what was happening at the Capitol in the United States, which was probably around between 2 and 2:30 p.m. So just within an hour or so after our weekly training and roundtable, until about that same time the next day. And so when I first heard, I knew that very quickly following finding out this information, I actually had to be present for a private mentor session with member Jessica Persini. So in those first moments, I kind of took in the information of what was happening, gathered enough of what was going on, knew that I couldn't give my attention there, put together a really quick OFTU to support myself with being present for Jessica, which I feel I did a really good job. And then after that, that is when I started to lose it. And I absolutely went into an obsessive mode. And in that pushing coping mechanism space that I haven't been in a very long time. And the pushing was showing up where I was just constantly checking for information. I was watching the news, I was reading articles, I was checking social media. And in hindsight, I know that what the pushing was is I was pushing for a resolution. I was pushing for a resolution that was out of my control. So I'll just also share. So again, that lasted close to 24 hours. I was probably up till like close to 1 a.m. I had a terrible night's sleep. I was up, I think at like, just a couple hours after falling asleep. Woke up the next morning. I had a headache. I literally felt like I had a hangover, which I haven't experienced probably in close to 20 years, but you do not forget that feeling. But it was a coping mechanism hangover, no alcohol involved. And I had a headache. I had to take medication to try to like calm the headache, and was relying on energy management like crazy to try to bring myself back into my body, to bring myself into a space of having a more regulated nervous system. What really helped me shift was remembering my I am statement. To remember that my I am statement, I am calm, brought me into a space that even my OFTUs were not doing, into a space that even my scripting wasn't doing, into a space that even meditating wasn't doing. It was a positive trigger for me to remember a conscious choice that I had made and had to face and recognize that I was not following practices to support myself with that I am. So for you to begin to think about what is your I am for 2021. Now, how does this connect to the power of will? It connects to the power of will because it is our will in any given moment, what we think, what we feel, and how we act. And no one can take that away from us. No outer circumstances can take that away from us. It is our choice and decision, whether conscious or not, to give over our will to external circumstances. Write that down. It is our choice, whether conscious or not, to give over our will to external circumstances. And that's what I had to own. And again, it was my I am statement that brought me back. Also, through assessment, I've put in place a new kind of quick assessment check in regards to global disasters, because as I've been saying since March 2020, this is not over. And if anything of the events of the past week have shown, any kind of glimmering hope that you have that things are going to go back to how they were pre-pandemic, it is not going to happen. So we must rise to the occasion to find a new way of managing our energy, being in our strengths, and being willing to lead from this place and space. For myself, part of that quick assessment for myself in regards to a global disaster is 1, is it happening right outside my door? 2, is it having a negative impact on anyone that I know specifically and personally? 3, does that negative impact include myself? If I answer no to those 3 questions, then it is my responsibility to manage my energy and get back to the task at hand. That is my divine free will, and that is what I mean by using this power as part of New Year planning to be able to balance the necessities of day-to-day needs with the energy of living legacy, to stay moving forward while also remaining conscious. I will not give over my divine free will to any narcissist, whether they happen to be the leader of a country or not. Breath in and let it out. So I'd like to call on member Stephanie Bonte-Lebert to actually share her experience with I am statements as well, because it's been quite powerful and profound to watch her work with a deliberate I am statement through the past 12 months of 2020. And then in regards to a choice that she's already made about her I am statement for 2021. So Stephanie, could you raise your digital hand? And then Lorna will just bring her forward.
Hello. So my I am statement for 2020 was I am valuable. And this was chosen at the January roundtable that we had in 2020 before the pandemic hit. And it was already a journey I had started with a conversation with someone in my world who was asking me to do things for no money or very little money. And so I chose that statement to step in my value as a business owner. And then I could not have anticipated the ways it was going to support me throughout that year, but it kept coming up. It was on every 6-month plan. It was on every weekly plan. It was on every daily checklist I created. So I was seeing it all the time. And it allowed me to not only ask to be paid, but to increase my income and land a $60,000 contract. And then it allowed me to stand in my value around getting to have a vacation. And it allowed me to stand in my value when I was blindsided right towards the end of the year and told, no, I'm only going to pay you half of what I said I was going to pay you. And I stood up for myself and said, absolutely not. That's not acceptable. And it just one thing after another has really helped me. I've had the most profitable year in my business. I increased my profit by $45,000 compared to the year before. And it's just it was a blessing to just have that be my anchor throughout the year so I could stand in that and be reminded of it constantly. And then as I move into 2021, I already see some of the shifts that are happening with what I want to be creating for myself. And those shifts are going to require me to be uncomfortable and to have difficult conversations and to do things that I'm not used to doing. And so I chose I am courageous for my 2021 statement. And as Heather reminded me, I can have both. I could still be telling myself I am valuable and I am courageous as I move through this year.
Beautiful, Stephanie. Thank you so much for being willing to share and give an example. So appreciate it. The key word that Stephanie used was anchor. That is the power of the I am statement. And that was what I experienced last Wednesday for myself as well. It took me a while to get there, but eventually I was able to connect back in to that anchor. And then all of the other energy management that I was doing had the opportunity to have more of a profound effect. So the I am statement, and as Stephanie also so beautifully shared, energetical, and practical, because she shared with you how using that as a consistent anchor showed up in her planning, 6-month plans, 30-day plans, week plans, 3-day plans, and resulted in outer tangible experiences, increased income. So from there, then we want to take the practical aspect further, connecting divine free will with New Year planning. And from here, I'm going to ask Susie to do a screen share and to show you some assessment questions that you can begin to work with for yourself, both in regards to supporting you in anchoring into your own I am statement for 2021, but also for how you actually use planning. As again, Stephanie mentioned, 6-month plan, 30-day plan, weekly plans, 3-day plan. What did you learn from end of year review, 12-month assessment about what worked and didn't work with planning for yourself in 2020? In regards to what didn't work, was this due to global events, meaning we all had amazing plans in January 2020, and March 2020 introduced a whole different pivot opportunity? Or was it due to personal approach resistance? I set these goals for myself, I set these plans for myself, but then I didn't follow through. Resistance to change or willingness to embrace change, meaning I didn't want to face the changes that 2020 gave, or I changed my plans because I willingly embraced what I had to change as a result of 2020, or a combination of both global and personal. These questions can support you in taking personal responsibility with how you use your will as a highly sensitive entrepreneur, as a highly sensitive leader, when planning for 2021 in the midst of these exceptional times. Because if there is anything that we can count on in these next 12 months, it is that you cannot count on anything. So, how are you going to become a master of radical change and use your will to support